Well, the warmer months can bring unpredictable weather to our region, and we want to make sure that you are prepared in the event of a power outage, a flash flood, or other impacts of severe weather. Christopher Harbosh joins us now. He is the coordinator of the City of Ottawa's Emergency Management Program. Good morning to you.
Morning.
Throughout the morning, too, we've seen some mixed reviews and comments where people are completely unprepared or prepared. When you think about that as a whole, what does being emergency prepared actually look like to you?
Well, fortunately, it's pretty easy to be prepared in Ottawa. There's really three simple steps. It's knowing what you're preparing for, having a plan, and then stockpiling some supplies. And knowing what you're preparing for in Ottawa can mean a lot of different things depending on where you live. We're a very big city, and some of the more common emergencies that we experience, power outages, high wind events, extreme temperature events are some of the common things that residents can prepare for, and having a plan for those. If you have to evacuate, do you know where to go? If you have to stay put, do you have what you need at home to be comfortable? And how do I talk to my loved ones and my families when communications are down? So planning for instances like that is a good start.
Great tips for there. Okay, so what would actually go into an emergency kit, and would we differentiate between each emergency, or do you have one kit fits all?
So there's definitely some common items that you can put into a one-size-fits-all kit. Planning for specific emergencies is definitely a good idea, but some of the common items that can go into an emergency kit, a crank-powered flashlight and radio for when power goes out, a can opener if you have canned food in there, and one thing that I don't have here is food items and water, but 4 liters of water per person per day is really important. A first aid kit, some food for your pets. If you have pets, it's really important to plan for them as well. A copy of your emergency plan is really important. And then some things like, if you have young children, it can kind of be scary for them. So just having something to kind of keep them distracted, keep their mind off things, keep them busy is also really helpful. I would also really stress the importance of having some sort of battery pack in your emergency kit. And I have 3 different ones here. Kind of one charge for your cell phone, something that can maybe charge a laptop for a couple days, and then something much more functional that can charge many devices, can boost your car, can fill air in your tires. So depending on what you need, you have options.
I think you make a great point too about having those conversations with like your friends or your children.
Yep.
What does that look like? Would you want to do that before an emergency to have them prepared, or during? What's your recommendation?
Definitely before an emergency happens. We don't know when emergencies are going to happen. It's very common when they do happen to not think clearly, to not be able to rationalize. So by planning ahead, having those hard discussions with your children, hey, if a fire happens, we have to get out of the house. Do you know how to do that? And the more you can plan ahead and prepare ahead of time, then the more confident you'll be when emergencies happen. Having a plan is also a really important part of that. Yeah.
And you mentioned you have such great options here, but you mentioned depending on where you live, that can differentiate how you should be prepared.
Yep.
Can you give me a couple examples of maybe someone that lives out an hour outside of Ottawa or someone that's right in the hub? What would some of those differences be?
So, for someone who lives on the outskirts of Ottawa, we know that sometimes the power infrastructure is a little bit older and power can go out for a little longer. The resources are further away. So stockpiling some supplies for rural residents is really important. On the flip side, for urban residents, there are protests that happen downtown that can kind of take away from the commute. Transit incidents sometimes happen, traffic, and then extreme temperature events as well. And in downtown urban cores, that temperature can drive up pretty quickly. So, there are general kind of catch-all preparedness activities you can take on, but knowing what you're planning for based on where you live is really important.
Always better to be over prepared than underprepared, especially over the last decade with what we've seen here in Ottawa. Chris, really appreciate your time making sure we are emergency ready for the summer and months ahead.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.